Hey creatives, welcome back to my channel. This is Sammy Says Create, and this is a channel where I do all sorts of DIY and creative projects, and I bring you along for the ride. So today's video is the start of a series of videos that I would like to create. It's all based on upcycling clothes, or as you Americans like to call it, thrift flips. I don't really know what it's called in England. It's kind of just like, I think it's just upcycling, but we upcycle loads of things. We don't call it thrifting either, it's just like charity shop shopping, second-hand shopping. So today the plan is to turn this old skirt into a mini backpack. So let's get started and roll those titles. I am a massive fan of fashion and new clothes and stuff like that. I am a really firm believer in really trying to reuse things where you can. So I do donate all my clothes when I can. And if I'm buying new clothes, I tend to buy them secondhand unless it's anything that's really essential. This is something that I've only really started doing quite recently, but it's something that I really believe in, something that I really want to make part of my life just going forward. There are so many places and opportunities out there where you can buy secondhand clothes, half of them that genuinely have never even been worn, for so cheap, and it's just a win-win. So I recently read a statistic that really stuck out to me. £140 million worth of clothes go to landfill in the UK every single year. Okay, so just the UK. You will probably be surprised what is actually impacted just by you throwing that pair of pants away that you didn't want anymore. And there are so many ways that we ourselves can actually do things to try and reduce the amount that we are throwing away. This idea of upcycling is just one of them. So obviously and understandably, not all of us are able to do this all of the time. I think it's just really important that we try when we can. That's the most important thing. So just a bit of background context. This skirt I've had for years and years. It has had a nice decent amount of wear from it. Unfortunately, my butt's got a bit bigger, my belly's got a little bit bigger, and it doesn't fit me anymore. So I was looking to donate it, but when I was looking at it and inspecting it, there is actually quite a nice little rip in the side of it, so it's not something I feel like I can donate. The actual material itself is like a fake leather or a pleather, and I really liked it. So my initial concept for this mini backpack I did see on my favourite social media site, Pinterest. It was a black leather backpack that I think the actual title was "This backpack sold out in 5 minutes" or something crazy like that, and I thought that would be quite a viable new life for this black skirt. I'm not going to waffle on too much more, I'm going to just jump straight into the video, but just to let you know that as I stand right now, I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to do this. I'm excited to have a play around and just see what I can do. Obviously I'll bring you guys along with me and I will explain what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So let's get upcycling. Okay, so initial thinking here is the two front panels I wanted to be the outside of the bag, the back panel I wanted to be the bottom of the bag, and I wanted to use the hem and the waistband as the straps. I started off by unpicking those two front panels first, and I unpicked the top and the bottom of each end of the zip just so I could get to the waistband and the hem, and that way I could cut them off without actually affecting the zip, and I can reuse the zip at a later date. I cut the waistband off really gently and carefully so it was nice and neat, and by the looks of it, it just needed a little bit more unpicking at the other end. And I did exactly the same with the bottom hem as well. I proceeded to unpick the rest of the zip so that, again, I could use it at a later date. I wasn't going to use it for this bag, I don't think, because I wasn't quite feeling it. But it is a nice sturdy zip, so it's worth keeping. This is me just carrying on unpicking those two front panels just so that they're all separate. And here they are completely unpicked and ready to go. So this was the front panels in the skirt, and it's where the pockets are, as you can see in the top there. But I knew that I wanted to keep the pockets in the design somehow. So here I am measuring what the circumference, I think that's the right one, of the bag was going to be. So I knew my bag was going to be both of these two panels put together was going to make the walls or the outside of the bag. So I was just measuring how long this was going to be, so I knew how long the bottom of my bag needed to be. And that's when I had to get my pen and paper out because, yeah, I can't work in my head. So I figured out that the full circumference of the bag was going to be 33.5 inches. So obviously I have two pieces of material, so I divided that by 2, which equals 16.75. But the bag needs 4 sides, so it needs 2 longer sides, 2 shorter sides. 1 short side and 1 long side need to equal up to 16.75 centimetres. So to make it easy for myself, I did the longest side 10.75 and the shortest side 6 centimetres. I hope that makes sense. I then use this rectangle as my template to cut out a square out of the back panel of the skirt. I did also add a little bit extra on for a bit of seam allowance as well, but I didn't actually need to put on as much as I did here. I ended up trimming it down a little bit in the end. And then I cut a very similar size rectangle, pretty much the same, it's just a tiny bit smaller, just out of interfacing, and I ironed that to the material. I just wanted the bottom to have a little bit more stability because this material was really thin. And then just pop the bottom of the bag to the side, and I concentrated on stitching both of my 2 front panels together. So you'll see here that my pockets are both on the outside and facing upwards. I knew I wanted these to be at the top of the bag, so that's why they're in that position. I'm just clipping them together here, and I'm just going to sew along just to create a nice tight seam so that we're working with 1 full piece of material instead of 2. I then just sewed a very small hem onto the top and the bottom of the bag, so the really long bits. In hindsight, I didn't need to hem the bottom because the bottom was being sewed in anyway, so I'm not sure why I did that, but the top definitely does need hemming just for neatness. So here it is with the hems on. I will reiterate that my sewing is never straight. This material is quite hard because it's like a stretchy denim on the inside and shiny on the outside, so it's literally pretty much one of the worst fabrics to sew with because you either stretch it or it moves. So no judgment here, please and thank you. Also, I will really quickly mention that I decided to use a red thread so that you guys could see it, but I also think black and red make a really nice combination and it would look cool on like the fake leather. So next step, I just trimmed down the bottom piece that we created earlier a little bit, just so it was a little bit neater. And I then began to clip the bottom edge of the sides of the bag, that bottom hem that we sewed. I then clipped that all the way round the bottom of the bag here. I hope that makes sense. I did have to undo and redo this a couple of times as the bottom piece that I'd made was a little bit too big, so I just kept having to trim it down until that long piece fit all the way around the bottom, and we had a little bit extra seam allowance so that we could attach them the other side. So I then sewed this all the way around. And I did exactly the same thing with the 2 edges where they met. So I clipped them and just sewed them so they were nice and tight. Just to reiterate as well, it's really important that when you are sewing, especially this sort of fabric that's a little bit thicker, just make sure you do a couple of front stitches, then back stitches, and then carry on sewing, just to really tighten up that stitch and make sure it doesn't come out. So at this current moment, it is starting to look a bit like a bag. So I'm just going to turn it. Oh, I don't know what the front's going to look like. Oh my god. Push the bottoms out, the bottom out. I'm really liking this red contrast. To be fair, it looks really cute. Okay, and this is where we're at. Oh my goodness, I actually really like it. You've got the little pockets. So I'm just measuring out how wide I want my top flap to be, so how big I want it to be against the top of the bag. I can't remember exactly, but I think I decided to go for about 7 centimeters ish. So I just cut out a square that was 7 centimeters by 7 centimeters, I think, and you'll see me here just kind of curving off the edges, so it's a bit more, the bottom edge of the flap is a bit more of like an ovally shape. So to add a little bit more structure to the flap, I just keep laughing every time I call it flap, the lid, the opening thing, I cut some interfacing out the same size, and I realised that I was going to need 2 of the leather flappy bits. So once I'd ironed the interfacing to one of the sides, I put them both wrong sides together, clipped them, and I sewed all the way around, just leaving a little gap so that I was able to just flip it the right way around. I then just sewed a top stitch all the way around, and that just closed that gap and just gave it a little bit of an extra feel. It went a little bit kind of crinkly because the material pulled while I was sewing it, but it was really hard material to sew, so I'll let myself off. Next I just created the handle for the bag. I didn't measure this, I just chopped a length of fabric off what was left over. It needs to be a longish piece of fabric. You need to fold it in half just to crease it, then open it and then fold that in half to the creases and in half again, if that makes sense. Just have a kind of watch of what my hands are doing here. Then just clip it and do a straight stitch all down the side just to secure it into place. And next step is the straps. So here I'm just unpicking the label out of the waistband, because this obviously was the waistband, and it is now just kind of starting to hit me at this point how much of a big project this actually is. So if you've made it to this point already, that's amazing, thank you so much. It will be worth it when you see it at the end, I promise, but just bear with us, it was a much longer project than I actually initially anticipated. So someone measured, mum, and told me, mum, that this piece would be long enough to make 2 straps out of. Her rubbish measuring means that later on we will have to extend it, but to be fair, at least this way both straps will have been even. So yeah, I cut this in half so that I had my 2 straps. I decided to do a top stitch over the top of both of these, so I just went over the whole thing with the red stitching. There was a bit of fray in here as well, which I kind of cut off later on. Okay, so next was a pretty big bit, so what we had to do is I had to attach the flap, the handle and the straps, but these all needed to be sewed on at the same time with the same stitch. So, fearing for the life of my sewing machine, that is what I did, and it survived to tell the tale. And yeah, this is where we're up to so far. So I think it's looking pretty good. At this point I then pinned the straps to the bottom of the bag just to check if it was going to be long enough, which I obviously found out they weren't going to be long enough, which I was like, I'll deal with tomorrow. Just popping in here because I am now on day 2 of this project. Initially it took me quite a lot longer than what I thought it would, so I had to put it down for the night, so I've picked it back up again today. I'm not exactly 100% sure as to where we got to with the footage because I've not reviewed the filming yet. I think I'd just about done the straps. This initially was 1 strap, but it was too short, so thanks for the shoddy measuring there, Mum. But you know, not being ungrateful. What I need to do now is I need to just extend these straps so that they are long enough for it to fit on my back. And I just need to put the zip fastening in the middle as well. Looking back on this now though, I have made a slight bit of a boo-boo. And I shouldn't really have stitched this bottom seam until I had the straps ready. And that way I could have popped the straps through and sewn over it. And then the straps would have been really nice and tight. So depending on how I feel at the time of strap fixture, I will either just stitch them to the bottom of the bag, Or if I'm feeling like I am in an unstitching mood, I might end up just unpicking this seam slightly here, popping the strap through and then just restitching it on the other side. I'm not sure, but I will show you when it comes to that. Let's carry on. So let's start off by fixing the strap issue. So I used the hem that I cut off and I measured correctly, and I cut that to the right length, and I just trimmed off some of the edges so it was a little bit neater, and did that top stitching as well like I did with the other set of straps. I left the top section of the new extended strap unstitched and slightly open so that I could tuck the other section of the strap into this and then sew over it. So I did end up voting for the unpicking option just because I really didn't want it to look messy after all this hard work. So I turned the bag inside out and just unpicked a small amount on that bottom seam towards the back of the bag, just so I could pop the straps through. I pinned them in place and then just did a straight stitch over where I'd put the straps in. I just went a little bit further either side just to make sure that those unpicked stitches were going to stay in place. And yay, the perfect size! Next was to choose a zip, which was pretty hard because I wasn't sure what colour I wanted to go for. I love mustard. I don't know if you can tell from like my channel and stuff like that, but I love mustard. It's one of my favourites, and I did think it went with the red, or it could have gone with black, but no, I ended up going with red. I thought it would match the bag better. I decided in order to give the bag a little bit more structure, as the material was quite thin, I wanted to give it a bit more of a triangular shape, so I turned it inside out and just popped these darts into it. I started the darts at either end of the zip, where the zip's in the middle of the bag, and just ended about 3/4 of the way down. I then just pinned the zip into place as well, just to give it an idea and make sure everything was all in the right place. And then I persisted just to sew down these lines, just to really give it these darts. I chopped off the extra material as close to the line as I could get without obviously cutting it. And now we have a really cute little triangular shape. And just for the last step, I switched to one of these little cuties. This is a zipper foot, and this makes it so much easier trying to sew in zips. I then sewed in the zip and obviously just switched sides with the zipper foot depending on which side of the zip I was sewing in. I really struggled with just the absolute last bit of the zip that I had to try and sew in on the other side, so it just wasn't really going in properly and I couldn't really sew it without hitting the rest of the bag. So I am pretty convinced that there is probably a better way of doing this, and I should have done this in a different order. If you can spot that and you can see what kind of order I should have done it in, please do comment down below. It'd be really nice to learn. But yeah, so I kind of was winging this as I was going, and that's why things kind of got done in this order. So I did end up just hand sewing the zip on the end just to secure it in place. So I turned my bag the right way around and ta-da! We have a finished backpack! Yee! Oh my gosh, I never thought I was gonna get there, but I did it, and it works, and these pockets are really cute, and the zip works. It's just fab. I'm just so chuffed with myself. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much for staying with me. Your treat is to have some awkward B-roll footage of me trying to make my bag look amazing. I mean, I'm not doing it much justice, but I try. So there you have it. I have successfully, well I think successfully, upcycled that skirt from earlier on, and I have turned it into this awesome backpack. Now I'm pretty chuffed at this. I'm not gonna lie, kind of just winged it most of the way through with a rough idea of what I wanted to do. So I'm really impressed that it actually came out this well. I love the pocket bits in the middle here. I love that I've managed to keep the original pockets and the original skirt into the design. It's not neat, it's not perfect, but it has got a little bit of character, and I have tried to recycle as much of the skirt as possible. So obviously this video isn't designed for you to kind of follow step by step, as I highly doubt you'll have the same skirt as me. However, I do really hope that it kind of brings you some inspiration. I hope it gives you the general sort of gist of what parts you'll need to put together a bag, and hopefully you can just kind of take it and take the bits that you need from it and use that as inspiration for your own bag thrift flip upcycle. So if you have enjoyed today's video, it has been a little bit different, please do drop me a comment down below. Let me know if this is something you want to see more of in the future, as it's definitely something that I want to do. If you've enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and that way you will not miss out on any of my future videos. Follow me on Instagram to keep up with me throughout the week, and until next Thursday, keep creative.